Well, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming in this snow day. But at least the food is good. It's not the bag lunches, those bag. So it's hot. It's great. So again, thank you for coming to Lunch and Learn hosted by TLAC and Distance Education. My name is Ray Lee, and I'm Senior Director of Distance Education.
I'm Yannick Smucker. I'm the Faculty Associate for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment Center, TLAC.
So active learning strategies is our topic today, and we're going to address it from 3 different classroom settings: face-to-face, technology-enhanced, and online classrooms. So we'll have 3 presenters doing interactive activities with you. So before we do that, can we go around the table and introduce ourselves? Because I see a lot of new faces here, which is great. Welcome, everybody. So we'll let you get started.
Sure. We're so glad you could all come out today. And it's great to have you in this room thinking about pedagogy and instruction. One of the things that we too often, let slip off our radars. This is just one of the many initiatives that TLAC and Distance Ed are partnering on. You can also, I'm sure you've been hearing from the TLAC email address way too often. We also sponsor a professional development award, which you may have seen the guidelines floating around for. That's due in February, and we'll have other events throughout the year that you can come and learn from your colleagues and share with your colleagues. I'm a professor in the history department, and my main role and appointment is digital history, meaning I do a lot of things using digital technologies, creating digital objects with my students. I'm going to put all of that aside today and put on the other half of my persona, which is someone who works with the physical world. My own research has focused on material culture, which is the study of objects. And while I have honed that expertise through really interdisciplinary research, but focused historically on studying objects as my primary sources, I think it's really applicable to many other fields. It's really interdisciplinary, so you could study objects from a sociological perspective, economic, physical properties. I'm sure there's lots of other fields, multidisciplinary fields, that I'm not even thinking of about how we engage with objects. But themes that you can address through the study of objects include the actual physical construction of something, the craft, the art that's put into making it, the aesthetics, the economics, like the consumer culture of why do we buy the things we buy? I mean, I see like probably 20 of these objects like sitting on the table. Like why do we have these things in our pockets all the time? These are the sorts of things I investigate with students when I teach my American material culture class. We look historically, but we also apply a lot of that to how the students themselves interact with the physical world. I'm going to share with you today the activity that I do on the first day of class in my American Material Culture class. But I think it's applicable with adaptation to a lot of different settings. I think it sets the stage for a class that is very hands-on and focused on actually engaging with the material world. Like from the very first day, before we even look at the syllabus, they're handling objects. So I brought along my goodie bag of fun objects, which I will, going to have you, the way I set this up in my classroom is I gear it sort of like speed dating. And have everyone paired up, I line up the desks or the chairs in pairs, and then I give them 3 minutes with one pair, and then everyone has to rotate. We're not going to do a bunch of musical chairs today, but that's sort of how I perceive this. I'm sure some of you have heard of speed dating the syllabus, where you get the syllabus on the first day and you have to find different things, and then you get paired with another partner and then paired with another partner. The speed dating idea can work with analysis of a lot of different things, even things that aren't physical. It's a good way a different sort of way to do the sort of pair and share, where you're pairing and sharing with someone for a short amount of time and then moving on to another person, and that way you engage with a lot of different classmates. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to have you in pairs take a look at an object and figure out what it is, what it does, sort of its world. And what I am going to ask you to do is what I ask my students to do: come up with a thesis about the object that you are looking at. So make a claim, have something to say. And then we're going to talk about what kind of evidence you use to support that thesis. And so that allows students to have to think about the internal evidence that is in the object itself and where they get their external evidence, which is from their own experience, their own worldview, their own research, where do you get your external evidence? For this project, I don't ask students to conduct any research. It's just done right in that moment where you make a claim, you figure out how to back up that claim. So, find a partner, whoever you're sitting next to, and I will pass out some fun stuff. So try to take another minute or so to develop your thesis, and then we're going to hear from some of you, okay? Sort of builds on the classic pair and then share. So I want to hear what some of your thesis, your arguments are that you can make about the object you have in front of you. Ready? All right. Is there a group who wants to volunteer? Or we can, yes, please. Tell us, make your claim.
Our claim is that this is a piece of a toy that goes with a kid's kitchen set. It looks like it's close to the name of craft.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what it would be because I don't know what the language is if it isn't English. It doesn't open. It's kind of like a soft plastic like you see toys for little kids' kitchen sets.
Okay, so what kind of evidence are you using?
The size.
Okay.
The construction of it. The label on it.
So that's all internal evidence to the object itself. Mm-hmm. And what does it tell you about childhood or consumer culture or anything like that?
Things in childhood often reflect an adult or real world situation. That they're scaled down for a child's size.
Sure. So you're drawing on, you know what like a real, let's say a jar of mayonnaise looks like, and so you know that this is like a pared down child's version of like a real world thing. And so you're drawing on your own experience having gone to a grocery store, having children, yeah, all of these things. Excellent. Okay. Who else wants to share a thesis about an object?
Okay.
Yes.
So we kind of had two views.
Please, yeah.
So this is a baby food grinder, and you can see it's dated with the mom and the baby, and also designed by a doctor, saves money, easy to clean. So my thesis is that you can be in charge of what you feed your baby, health-wise, and also saving money. And I drew from my background, I'm a dietitian.
Oh, well, this is the perfect object for you.
I'm excited because I did make my own baby food.
Uh-huh.
And then it was interesting, Cheryl kind of had a different viewpoint.
But it adds to that
Yeah.
because, from the gendered point of view, it's mommy's job, right, to do this kind of labor in the household and protect her child from the evils of corporate baby food. Of course, this is put out by a corporation. So I draw from my own paranoia. With that.
So right, you're drawing from your own worldview.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
right? Yeah.
pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Great. And what kind of evidence are you using any internal evidence from the object to make these claims, either of you?
Yeah, she's going
From the marketing box, the marketing, the illustration? Yeah, exactly.
Designed by a doctor. And
Right.
that we trust the doctor.
Yeah, so that really supports this idea that I'm doing this because it's best, like Dr. Spock or whoever it was at this point in time. This full disclosure was the baby food grinder that my mother used when dated. I'm the person who's dated here. This product from the 1970s. But that's great. You're drawing on your own sorts of perceptions, drawn from nutrition, drawn from being a feminist, being paranoid, whatever. So you're using external evidence to support your claim as well as the internal evidence. Let's do, like, how much time do I have, Mark and Ray? We can do at least one more of these. I'd love to hear. Someone else got a good one to share? Go for it.
Well, different approach. So this is like a decorative religious thing. The first thing that I thought was like, oh, it's like a decorative hairbrush, so I can keep this on my desk. When I need to, grab it, brush my hair. And the added benefit of it is, there's more. Since it's religious, like it will really make my hair look good.
That's right. You have holy intervention in your hair. Yeah, that's
So,
right.
like evidence was just like the bristle-like look of it, and that this looked like a religious type decoration, so that's why we thought it would definitely
Okay.
make your hair look good.
So what were you drawing on to know that this was religious?
She has her hands like this, so that's like a signal to me.
So that's internal evidence from the object.
And then just like her garments
Okay.
are religious like.
Good. So obviously when I'm teaching a course that's about objects when I'm doing this. Can you think of ways that you could apply bringing objects like physical things into your classroom in a similar way in all the different disciplines that you all work in? Yeah.
So I do an object thing when I teach Monroe's motivated sequence. It's a persuasive strategy. And I have them come up with an alternative use for the object, and then they have to sell it to us like an infomercial using the steps of Monroe.
Like the brush.
Exactly.
That's really great.
It
Yeah.
actually is hard for them to think like, this is not what I think it is. It takes longer than you think for them to think, okay, so what is it? And it could be anything you want it to be except its original purpose. So kind of the repurposing and then sell it to us following this.
I love that idea of like you have to make up a fake alternative use. That's really cool. Other
I
applications?
just want to ask a question. Make
Sure.
I understand. So the internal evidence is if you looked at that and thought it was
Yes.
a brush.
Yeah.
Because
And
we're
then,
looking at the back of it.
right,
We never saw the front of it.
Okay. Yeah.
okay. So the external, would that be from my own
For your own experience,
or
your
my research or
right.
what I know about
Absolutely.
things? So, okay, we probably shouldn't-
So this all builds on what I do in a history classroom, which is always about making a thesis, but supporting that thesis with evidence.
Right.
And some of your evidence is internal to the thing. If you're analyzing a text space object, a source, it would similarly be some of this is evidence coming from the thing, and some of it is evidence that is based on my own experience, based on my research, based on knowing what similar letters or documents or reports look like. So similarly, this isn't the first time you've encountered a little jar of food, so you can draw on your own experience having encountered similar things. But being able to articulate that this is evidence, I'm getting evidence from my own experience, from this is how I know, X reason is how I know Y, I think is useful for actually, it's critical thinking to some extent, but I think one of the most important things we do at the university is teach students how to use evidence to support their claims. We're in a world where people make claims about all kinds of things without using evidence, unfortunately.
No, I love the idea because I'm sitting here thinking I could use that when we're writing papers. Like right now, I'm writing papers about movies, films about schools, like Breakfast Club and those types of movies. So the evidence, I think this. Okay, well that's okay. You can state your opinion.
Sure.
So that could be your external evidence coming
Yes.
from yourself, but you also need to get evidence
From the thing itself, yeah. So I do similar activities using photographs or paintings or other types of sources or more traditional written sources as well, where you have to think about internal and external evidence. I think it's fun to have these weird objects that students often are very unfamiliar with, but it's also, it kind of requires them to think about, wow, everything I encounter in the world is like a source, and I can have evidence for everything that I encounter. And especially since they live in their computers and their phones so much of the time, it's nice to have something that is physical and tangible. Other potential applications to using objects, physical objects in the classroom you can think of? Yeah.
I'm teaching a cultural module now and nutrition, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking food is
Yeah.
object.
Right. So I, in the same class, I teach. One of the weeks is on food as an object, and they have to. We kind of potluck at the end of the week, and they have to talk about how they make things, and we even do like a unit on. The vegetable peeler, and like how the vegetable peeler does something really efficiently, and if you were trying to peel a vegetable 100 years ago, you would just use a knife or a blade, and like thinking about the way we interact with food has changed over time is part of that cultural connection as well. There's one other really fun activity I do with objects, physical objects in that particular class. It kind of, I developed it sort of on a whim. I think the first time I taught this course, it was during March when March Madness was going on, and we were talking about objects as being strictly utilitarian, where if you could really drill down to what their most basic function is, what is the most functional object? Each student had to bring an object to class where they could post it on our discussion board, and then we set it up as a big bracket, and they had to talk about the objects as being, what is this doesn't have any symbolic use, it is only strictly functional. That was the case they had to make. And so again, they had to come with evidence to support their claim. I think the last time I taught this class, we went through all the brackets, and they would vote after each person made their case for why their object was the most functional object. I think it was hammer versus nail in the finals, so it was kind of beautiful. But but usually it's something like rope or hammer, or like anything that has sort of a more symbolic or mythological function would easily get shot down by the students, and they'd have to really make their case for why this is strictly about what it does, not what it looks like, not what it means, but what it does. So there's interesting ways you can bring the physical world into these more theoretical concepts, and I think having that object then will help them remember in their minds whatever the lesson or the key takeaway of a given class session was. Any questions or comments before we move on to the more? That is a baby like teething tool. Yeah. Made out of some, I forget what kind of wood. There's a particular kind of wood that's especially good for babies to grasp and chew on when they're busy putting everything in their mouth. It's better to have wood than to put more plastics in your mouth, right? Yeah.
What was yours?
I had no idea.
He had nothing.
Small guitar.
It's a tiny guitar. All right, we are going to sort of progress now into semi-tech, low-tech. I'll come and collect your objects.
All right. My name, I know we introduced ourselves earlier, but just real quickly, I'm Mark Drum. I'm a senior instructional designer here in Distance Ed, and I'm going to be talking about a game called Sketch Party TV. But before I do that, I'm going to throw things at you. And yes, that I really am going to throw things at you. What I have here is a foam stress ram. You might be asking yourself, Mark, why do you have a foam stress ram? And the reason is, if you look very closely, the number for the WCU Counseling Center is on the side of this, and this is a place that HR has recommended to me on more than one occasion. So that's why I have a stress ram. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this out into the crowd. Whoever catches it, I want you to throw it to somebody else, and then whoever catches that, I want them to throw it to somebody else. Okay? So 3 throws. And Yes, I know, especially with food and everything around, it's crazy. Now, whoever ends up with it is hopefully not a DE person. If a DE person ends up with it, please throw it to somebody else because we can do this whenever we want. So, all right, Ray, look alive.
You're also assuming we can catch.
Well, that's. Where is it? Where is it? We can't have lost it already. I mean, come on. Well, no, hey, whoa, that was too many. It was a good try. It was a good try. All right, so that's one. We're going to do another one. All right, here we go. Look alive, Danielle. All right, we'll get back to you guys later.
I don't think you can keep it.
No, you do have to give it back at the end. I'm sorry. Well, I need the number, so it's the only way I can get it. Sketch Party TV is a drawing game similar to Pictionary, or there used to be a game show on called Win, Lose, or Draw back in the 90s, I think it was. I don't know if you remember that or not. It is available for iOS only, and it costs $4.99. And the nice thing about that is, included in that cost is the ability to make your own list of items to draw. That's the important part in this. In order to play it, you obviously need an iOS device. In particular, I highly recommend a larger sized iPad and an Apple Pencil. And the only iPads that can use those are iPad Pros or a 6th generation iPad. Okay. If you don't have that, then if you still have a medium to larger iPad and just one of those styluses, you know, with the black tips at the end that they give out all over the place now, you know, that's fine too. I do not recommend the smaller iPads, the iPad minis. They're a little too small. I do not recommend other iOS devices like iPhones or iPod Touches because, again, they're also too small. But they would work if it absolutely came down to it. You also need an Airplay Receiver. Now, what exactly is that? That is a device that connects to a display like this or a projector or something like that that allows the iPad to connect wirelessly to the display using the Airplay protocol. Okay, this is something that's built into the iPad and Apple's devices, and that's very important. There are a few different things that you can use as Airplay receivers. If you have an Apple TV, some people have those hooked into their TVs at home to stream Netflix and other stuff like that. That's one thing you can use. Your laptop can be an Airplay receiver with third-party software. One of the programs that you can use to do that is called Air Server, and I think it costs somewhere like $12 to $15 for that software. And then one other thing that you can use is something called the Immersive Solstice. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, what is the immersive solstice? It sounds very sort of mysterious and whatnot. And the good news is that we have these things installed all over campus. Here at Westchester, we call it Ramcast. So with this particular TV, we have Ramcast installed. We're good to go as far as Airplay receiver, and I know in classrooms all over campus we're seeing this more and more all over the place, so it's not necessarily something that you probably have to worry about all that much. So that's the good news there. The rules of the game is, and again, if you've played Pictionary or anything like that, it's very similar. First player, you're divided up into teams. First player in team one will draw on the iPad. They're given something to draw, so they will see that on the iPad. The people guessing will not see that item on the iPad, so it'll be a mystery to the people who are guessing. But the people on your team will be shouting out answers, right? They will be shouting out what they think it is. And they will continue to do that until they get it right, or they decide to pass on to the next item to draw, okay? And that is repeated until either the 2-minute timer is up or you've guessed 5 items correctly, okay? Then somebody on the next team comes up, starts drawing, repeats the same process. You can have multiple people go back and forth on teams, so you know, however large you want your teams to be, that's up to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually play this now. And in order to do that, we need a couple of people to come up and draw. And guess who those people are? So
You need one medium to large iPad for this.
yes,
So-
although I will talk about that a little bit more after this. So what we're going to do is let's divide up the room. Okay, we're gonna split the table right down the middle here. You, sir, at the end, you're going to have to decide where your loyalties lie. Okay, all right. So I don't.
I'm on this side.
Okay, so we'll have this side be team number 1. We'll have this side be team number 2. So come on up, drawers.
Artiste. Woo-hoo. Woo-wee.
So it's going to be
It's a line.
Okay.
He's team 1, I don't have to be
You're team 2, right? So what is your first name?
Jason.
Jason. All right, so let's get that in here. And where am I? Amy? Okay.
What's a goofy music like the Who, which I always turn down?
All right, Jason. You ready?
Yeah. I'm not, but I'm ready.
All right, so this side of the room, you're guessing now, okay? This side of the room, be quiet. I mean, unless you want to help the other side of the room. It's up to you, all right?
You just call out.
Yeah, so as soon as you think you know what it is, call it out. All right, so I'm going to hit play. Okay. All right, and I'll give you this. And your 2 minutes are going to start, and you'll see the item up at the top here, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so hit ready. And that's the thing you have to draw.
Hot bowl, cereal.
Okay?
Wow.
Hamburger. Big Mac.
Sandwich.
Bun. Roll.
Fun.
Sleep. Tired. Very sad. Cranky.
Crying.
Cry. Tear.
Tear.
Z. Crying.
Sobbing. Weeping.
This is harsh for some reason.
Sad.
Tearful.
I'm not allowed to talk, right?
Yes, you can't talk. If you need to pass, you can do that.
Wait, you got it.
Okay.
It'll come back to it later on. If
Jigsaw puzzle.
Wow.
You're way better drawer than
Radio box.
House, home, community.
Barn.
Barn, yes. And weave. Got it. Oh, it's your turn.
so, there you go.
Way to go.
You guys.
You got Cheryl, our team.
I suck at this. I know it already.
All right, Amy, no pressure at all.
None.
None whatsoever. Are you ready? Yes. All right, so hit ready. There you go.
Tree, forest,
Leaves.
Branches, apple, fruit, apple
Cherry
picking,
tree, apple tree.
or forest.
Got it. It was an orchard.
ah,
Can I erase?
Yeah, clear. Yeah, there's a clear button then. Yep.
This is awful.
Wagon.
truck, car,
Train.
bus.
Bus.
Wow.
Matt. Speech bubble.
I'm like literally the worst.
Home plate.
Home plate. Ooh, you're the best.
Wow.
Ghost.
What is?
Worm?
Snake.
I know what it is.
Floaty.
Who said with an S?
Inchworm.
No.
Insects? Sloth.
Floats.
All right, we'll pass it.
Slugs.
No.
T-shirt.
T-shirt.
Sweatshirt.
Sweater?
Knitting.
Cardigan.
Stripes.
Suspended.
Jersey.
Not suspended.
Color block.
Vest.
Undershirt.
Cardigan.
Layers.
Jacket.
Bib.
What is it?
Tank top?
This part.
Sleeves.
No. We're back to the.
You're back to the thing before that you passed.
There's no way I can draw that. I'm sorry, guys.
Seal. That's hard. That's hard.
What was the last thing?
That one was that's hard. I will say it. That one is hard.
I knew it was a home plate. I'm with you.
So here, here it's set up. You can set the number of rounds and whatnot. It's set to go on to the next round or whatnot. But at the end, it would give you a final score and whatnot. Let me come back to.
No, we're like a floaty.
Oops. So okay, well, this is all fun and everything, but how are we going to use this in the classroom, right? Well, think about all of the subjects where you're drawing something, right? I mean, just about any course you can think of, at some point, you're up there on the board, up the board, drawing pictures or whatnot. Just to kind of give some examples. So, like, this is my very crude drawing of a heart, and I'm pointing to the mitral valve, so anything that uses anatomy, folks down in the College of Health or people who teach biology, that sort of thing. Economics, how many of those graphs do economists draw in class? I mean, it seems like all the time they're drawing those things. This is, in particular, is demonstrating equilibrium. If you're teaching how to use a particular piece of equipment or whatnot, right? So here is a microscope, and I'm pointing to the objective lenses on that. Folks who teach music, concepts within music and that sort of thing. This is an arpeggio. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many courses and subjects where drawing is involved in some way. Here is a way now where you can use that. For a couple of reasons. You can use this for assessment, and then also, just as a learning tool where the students can learn from each other, right? They can sit down and play this, and you can see, oh, okay, this is how I learned to do this particular thing if I can watch somebody draw it out. I'll say one thing too also is that we now have these active learning classrooms, right? So this is over in the BPMC where we've got multiple Ramcast TVs. So if you can find a way to get your hands on multiple iPads, right, there's no reason why you can't split your class up into smaller groups and have them play individually. Or, well, not individually, but in these smaller groups within the classes like that. So here's we've got these rooms now. Here's a great way to take advantage of that. That is really all that I have to say as far as this is concerned. Does anybody have any questions?
How
Yes.
hard is it to just set it up for a newcomer to set it up and play with the class?
It's actually fairly straightforward. I found it to be. To go in and to make your own lists is I will say the developer did a really great job. I mean, they really thought it out to try and make it as easy as possible. I would recommend getting together with an instructional designer. Maybe your first time or whatnot. Kind of just work through everything and make sure you've got it all down. But for the most part, I found it fairly easy to set up and use. Yes.
Anything similar on the Microsoft Android side? Or sides?
Not that I've really come across that really works this way. That doesn't mean that, you couldn't put something together on your own, like, just, well, I mean, even if, so let's say you have a Surface, right? So you have a Surface and you could just bring up, Microsoft Paint and use the stylus that comes with it and just, write down a list of things on a piece of paper next to it. I mean, you could kind of come up with a crude version of it on your own. But as far as a full package deal is the way that this works, I have not seen anything similar. That doesn't also mean it isn't out there. I just haven't seen it. So there could be. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to get started. We're going to talk about active learning in an online classroom, but the concepts that we're talking about here can apply to a face-to-face classroom as well. What we're going to talk today about is fostering student voice through podcasting. So let me ask you before we get started, who here listens to podcasts on a fairly regular basis? I as well. I'll admit, as a new mom, I'm always trying to figure out how to parent my child through podcasts. So
Grind your own baby.
I could grind my own baby. I'll listen to a podcast about that. Yep. So typically when we're listening to podcasts, you're listening to someone talk or two people talk for 20 minutes, half hour, up to an hour at a time. When we're talking about podcasting today in this context, I want you to think about it in terms of students recording just short bite-sized audio clips, okay? So we're not talking about hour-long, even 20 minutes long, okay? And we're trying to bring the student voice into the classroom, which is especially important in an online environment. So let's talk about the possible instructional uses, and there are many, so we're just gonna go through a few. First one being if you wanna discuss a course concept with a classmate. So you can get two students together, or they don't even have to be together since it is an online environment, and they can discuss course concepts. And you, as a teacher, can listen to that and see if they are understanding what's going on within the classroom. They can do language practice, storytelling, so one student starts a story and the others have to finish. They can reflect on course topics, do audio exit tickets, so you ask the question, they have to answer through a podcast. Do an overview of course readings, discuss current events, interview subject matter experts, and then most importantly, bring that student voice into the online classroom. So with all these instructional uses and all these possibilities, we have to think to ourselves, why isn't podcasting more popular in online classes or just classes in general? Really, because it's a tedious process. You have to record it, maybe on your phone or on your laptop, or even if you want to be that type A person, use Audacity, edit it, then upload it to D2L. And then when you upload it, does it go into the discussions? Maybe you put it in the assignments, and then it's a mess. Then the students have to find that. And if you're asking the students to create their own podcast, then you have to go and find their audio files, download them, listen to them. It's just not worth it, right? Good news. We have a new web-based tool that allows you to record short audio clips right within the website, and it's called Synth. Synth, you can get to it by going to gosynth.com, and this can be found on any laptop or mobile device. For any iPhone users, there is an iPhone app. But don't worry, Android users, I'm one of myself, so I'm not leaving you out. There is an Android app that they're saying is on the docket. But the mobile website is very good. I've used gosynth.com on my Android device, and it does work very, very well. What's nice about it is you can record up to 256 seconds long. So those hour-long podcasts that you're envisioning having to listen to from your students, that's not going to happen. You can only record up to 256 seconds long. And for those that are doing the math in your head right now, you're like, how many minutes does that translate to? That's a little less than 4.5 minutes, okay? So if you or your students do want to record a little bit longer, then it is possible by adding in another threaded podcast. So if you need to go up to 500 seconds, then the possibility is there. Let's talk about how Synth works. When you log in, you'll see this screen. And then in order to record a podcast, you're just going to hit the plus button on the top right-hand corner of your screen. And it looks pretty much the same on any mobile device. You'll see that plus button there. It's very prominent. When you do that, you'll be brought to this screen. And you're just going to go ahead and press start in order to record your podcast. So a couple features that I just want to point out. You are able to upload your own audio if you already have audio available, or if you want to perfect it in something like Audacity and then upload it. If your file is beyond 256 seconds, it's going to cut it off. You also have the capability to do video, but from what I've seen, audio has definitely been more popular within the website. But that possibility is there if you want your students to do that. Then when you're recording, you're going to see that the time just counts down. And then along the bottom of the screen, it just gives you how much time you have left. So you have a little bit of a view as to what you're looking at. When you're done, you do have the ability to turn transcription on. So this is really great for accessibility. So what happens is you can turn transcription on, and then after a couple minutes, you'll get a notification from Synth that your transcription is ready. And then you're able to go into that transcription and edit as needed. From what I've seen, they don't really capitalize letters a lot. So if you need something, if you feel like something's capitalized, you can go in, capitalize, make any grammar edits. Maybe you didn't speak clearly and they didn't hear it well enough, you can go in and edit it as well. Then you go in, put a title. You can provide an optional hashtag. So if you want your students to find your podcasts, or you want to find your students' podcasts really easily. And then you can also add an optional link. So maybe you create a podcast and say to the students, I want you to read the article below and then react to it with your own podcast. There's also an option to do threading and commenting. So maybe you start off a podcast and then you have the students respond to that with a thread. What's nice about this is I can listen to threads back to back to back. So I can go unload the dishwasher. I could go on a run, and I can listen to my students' responses back to back to back without having to touch anything, which is nice. The other feature is that you're able to do comments. So these are just written replies to your podcast. Let's talk about how you want to use Synth with your students, and it's really easy to do. When I want to, I know it's hard to see, but when I want to set up my own podcast with my class, what I do is I'll go to the podcast tab, and then there's an option here to create podcast. So you would just create a hashtag, and then you would do an optional description in here. So my question to you guys is, what is your biggest takeaway today? I want you to discuss that with a partner. But let's talk about how you get to this. After you do start podcast, you're going to be taken to this screen, and it will give you a website that you want your students to go to, and then it will prompt you for a code. The other nice feature about Synth is students do not need an account. This website was geared towards education, so in your case, you're in higher ed, you don't need to worry about students under 13, but the reason why they did this is for students in K to 12, then they can join Synth without needing an account. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to go to this website. You're going to be prompted for a code. You're going to put in this code. I know this website is a little bit long, so if you have a QR code scanner, feel free to scan the QR code. And then with a partner, I just want you guys to discuss, what was your biggest takeaway today? whether it be from this session or our other 2 sessions. Okay, take about 5 minutes. And let me know if you have any issues. Sorry, what was your question?
Just you mentioned about students using it to discuss reading or something like that. Do they have to physically be together to record that discussion? Or is
If they're not together, then what they can do is like maybe Zoom or do it on speakerphone and utilize another device.
okay.
Like,
There isn't a way to have 2
right,
users.
you're correct.
Okay. If you're using Zoom, that can just
Record in Zoom though as well. I mean, you can record the conversation right there.
Yep.
Having it so like an alternative if you wanted to.
Yeah. Like the concept.
If you wanted the conversation to be.
Yep.
You told if you want to go longer than the short amount of time you can
So
create a podcast.
if they are cut off after those 256 seconds, like I said, you can start a thread. So I can continue my conversation by just adding to the podcast.
Okay, so just continue.
Yeah. So if you think it would be about like a little less than 10 minutes long, then that would consist of like 2 cents.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah. Because 256 seconds is about 4.5 minutes. Yeah.
Colleen, does this work with D2L?
Yeah. So what you would do is in order to
Seeing this taking the place of a discussion, like having it as my discussion.
Yeah.
instead of having them.
Yeah. So what you would do in order to like integrate it within your class is you would just provide the link maybe within an assignment or like an announcement, and so they utilize the website in order to create this, and then you can access it via the web link that you provide.
Okay, so then I would go into the web link.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So you're utilizing the website to listen, and so you won't like listen to the podcast within D2L. Yeah. So as you guys can see, anyone who participated, their thoughts will come up on my like Lunch and Learn podcasts. So I just need to, if I were to go and listen to all the podcasts, I just need to sign into my account, go to podcasts, and then all my students' podcasts are right in the same spot. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Is this like a plugin that you could put into D2L like directly? Like
Yeah, so Sandy asked a similar question. So what you would do in order to integrate this in a way to D2L, you would provide a link within an announcement, maybe a discussion board or an assignment. The students would then be directed to this website, most likely with a code. If they have an account, then they'll just be automatically brought into this like podcast. And then they would go and record, and then in order for you to check their work, you would then sign into your account in Synth and listen to their work. Okay? So you're not necessarily going to listen to their podcast within D2L. Yeah?
So you had mentioned it's, that people have used it as like exit tickets or whatever. How much time do you think you'd need at the end of a class if you did the link like you said, and you said, okay, go click on here, go answer this question from it's our big question from today.
Yeah.
So they're just putting it there. They're not putting it on D2L.
Yeah, yeah.
So how much time do you think we need to have them do that? To do like a 2-minute
Yeah.
video or whatever?
The first time, you may want to allot a little bit more time because they're like, what is this? How do I get there? You know? You know how kids are. So I would, as long as they're set up with the website and the code, they can just, as they're walking out the door, record themselves, or as they're walking into their next class, like to their next class, not into their next class. So, yeah.
All right, so you could do it in 5 or 10.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And think, your podcasts are limited to 256 seconds. And that's good for them. They want to be short and concise, and also good for you, in that you don't have to listen to 10, 20-minute podcasts from Susie Joe. Whoa.
Whoa.
I don't, that's a little ominous.
Hopefully no one was that.
I'm a little nervous. Okay. Did you have a question, Jason?
Is there a way to do assessment in this?
No, so quiz questions, stuff like that is not
So
available.
what I'm thinking of is I use Flipgrid a lot.
Mhm.
And in there you can like give students immediate feedback in that platform, and then I just export that to D2L. And so I was wondering is there a way to give them feedback like within this platform?
You can give them feedback by way of your own podcast or comments, but in terms of like exporting grades in order to upload to D2L, no.
When
Yep.
you say comments, you can like type comments?
Yep.
Or
So-
can you do an audio response that's like threaded? Or?
So both. So remember, Thread is allows you to create your own podcast as a response, or you can do a written comment.
Either of those.
Yep. And then remember, threads can be listened back to back to back. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys.